Hello everyone, I'm Darth Lokewood, welcome back to my channel. Today we have another account review to do. 3.27 million galactic power, CFX, the Rebel Scum. And we can see that he's doing quite well in Arena, rank 1, and quite well in Fleet, rank number 5. Good stuff. Take a look in the account. We've got a Darth Revan team here. Bastila Shan, Vader, Thrawn, Malak. We've got a Negotiator fleet. And we've got number 470 in Division 3. But it looks like only at the Chromium level. So maybe what we can talk about today is a way to get that right up there to that Kyber level. Galactic power, 3.27. Decent split of galactic power between ships and characters. If we go in and we look at the ships, I'm kind of surprised on some of this because I see Anakin relict with a good ship. Ahsoka is gear 12. Clone Sergeant doesn't have much effort put into him, but he's at 7 stars. We got a Big Bosk. The Executrix has some effort put into it. The Imperial TIE Bomber is all skilled up. It's at 6 stars, but it's all skilled up. The Negotiator is good. It's maxed. We've got the TIE Advanced with Vader. And of course, he's all reliced out. The Home 1 is okay. Looks like Rebels might be some kind of backup fleet for him. We've got a bunch of 7-star ships. We've got the Rebel Y-Wing there, which is an excellent ship. And so the ships are leveled up, and the characters in the ships just aren't that big. So this fleet, yeah, it's a decent fleet, but it doesn't look very threatening without big characters. That's okay, though. I mean, he's got his fleet arena down pat with that Negotiator fleet. So everything else is just better options for Grand Arena for the other fleet. If we look at the characters, we got this Vader. I'm seeing 2 potency sets. I like it. 110 potency. Nice. That'll work. That'll do. Damage 8165. So pretty good damage. I expect to see a lot of offense. And that's what we see. Offense. And speed on the arrow, which what you would expect. So this Vader's in good shape, modded the way that I like to see a Vader modded. Got a little opportunity here to go to a 6-dot mod on the tenacity, but still 178 tenacity. That's awesome. High tenacity Malak is pain in the butt to deal with. So yeah, that's a good character right there. That's a terrifying thing to see. Looking at the Darth Revan. See what kind of speed we got on here. 348. Woo! That explains a lot about how he's number 1 in Squad Arena. That is a fast Revan. So let's check out this Bastila and see how far behind she is. I see a speed set on her, 6-dot mods that have been worked on. 305. That's a pretty fast Bastila as well. So yeah, his Revan team, Darth Revan team, is in good shape. And then I can see from these characters that we're working on the Sith Eternal Emperor requirements. We've got the Stark and Veers and Moff Tarkin and all that stuff. It looks like he's still working on Piet and Krennic, but I think once he gets those 2, he'll have the Sith Eternal Emperor, so it looks close. It looks like he's very close. Bunch of good characters in here. We see a Nest, that's 7 stars that's been worked on. We see, yeah, a lot of stuff. Got a Watambor in there. That's nice. We've got Treya. We got loads of characters in here, 7 stars, level 85, that form the potential for more teams. So I wanted to take a look at this droid team real quick, what he's got for droids. You can see he's got a Grievous in here, 7 stars, HK at 7 stars, BB-8, T3M4. So we'll get back to that here in a minute, but yeah, a lot of droids in there that aren't leveled up, but do have 7 stars already. So if we move on, then let's talk again about the strategy, the concept for the advice. So on Grand Arena and fleet placement, that's our main priorities. For Grand Arena, we're looking for a really big, solid defensive team to hold everything back. We're looking for at least one big offensive team to crush everything in its path. And we're looking for a good base of teams. And for somebody at this level in Grand Arena 3, we would expect to see a lot of teams, at least, let's say, 14 teams that are reasonably ready to participate in the event. We're talking about improving what's already there, and as always, that could already be in progress. It could already be what he's working on. So what's going well? He's about to get the Sith Eternal, and I like the focus. So there's a lot of stuff in this account, and it would be real tempting to go work on your Traya or go work on your Rebel team or finish out that Padme. But I mean, it looks like the decision has been made to go for the Sith Eternal Emperor, and that is what this account is doing. And it's just kind of leaving all that other stuff aside. And that is, when you decide to go for your Galactic Legend, it's exactly what I would recommend that you do. You just work on that. You just focus on it, keep plugging away until you get all the requirements met and you get that Galactic Legend. And then there's plenty of time to go back and start building more teams and working on other stuff. Great placement in fleet and squad. Can't complain at all about that. Getting lots of free loot every day from those. So I think it's a smart account. I see a lot of good mods. And like those speed mods on the Bastila and the Revan are excellent. And a lot of good unlocks. We got a lot of characters in here at 7 stars that could be used for the next projects. Zetas everywhere. This is a mature account. There are a lot of Zetas on a lot of characters, which is great. And then just potency on Vader, smiley face. So opportunities. After the Sith Eternal Emperor is in this account, then I think the need that I see, the opportunity, is to consolidate some teams. I think really what kind of stuck out to me was there's a lack of tanks. So there's 2 ways that you can guarantee certain things in the game. So if you're on an offensive team and you want to put in like 3 heavy hitters, you usually want a tank with pre-taunt so that whatever the opponent's going to do is going to land on, your Shore Trooper, your Sith Empire Trooper, your Kylo Ren Unmasked, Geo Brute. Those kinds of characters come in with taunt, and they can soak hits while the rest of your team does whatever it is that your team's going to do. And of course, the Malik's a big tank, but I would have expected to see a couple more tanks either on the way or being worked on. So if you don't want to work on the tanks, then the Revan team is an example of it. It's a go first and win team. They do so many debuffs and so much damage that by the time the other team finally gets to take a turn, it's too late. And you can do the same thing with Imperial Trooper team, for example. There are some teams that are just go first and win. Vader too. He's got Vader, and Vader can be that way. But eventually, you're going to run out of teams that are going to have enough speed mods to really go first all the time. And you're going to need those tanks. You're going to need to have a tank in a lot of these squads to get it to do what you want to do. And for where the account's at right now in Division 3, the roster feels like it's going to get stretched pretty thin pretty fast. I don't see a lot of good solo characters that are built up to high enough level. So it feels like, you can place a couple good teams on defense, and then, you're into pretty lackluster teams. And the same way on offense, you'll have a few really good teams for offense, but you're not going to have that, 7 or 8 strong teams to punch through and get good banners and solo some teams with one character, those kinds of things. So I feel like maybe that's really the opportunity for Grand Arena. is to get some of these teams up and running with viable characters. And for anybody who hasn't experienced the Galactic Legend Challenge, this account bloat, it's a real thing. You've got a relic Grand Moff Tarkin, you've got a relic Krennic, you've got a relic, the Veers, Piet, and Stark. And if you don't already have a good trooper team going, these are just characters that are getting up into the 25,000 galactic power, and they're not on a team that's doing something, and your galactic power just goes up and up and up. And just with the requirements, if this account is 3.3 million, there's probably 600,000 to 700,000 galactic power right now that's tied up in characters for the Sith Eternal requirements, and some of those characters are good, but there's probably 500,000 of it that's just not effective, and it really makes it hard for you in Grand Arena because it gives you a really high score on your top 65 characters for characters that aren't pulling their weight. So you can see this on other channels, and other YouTubers are going to talk about it. But it's a real thing. You get this account bloat that just blows up your GP. But you got to get these Galactic Legends, and you got to do it, and you got to go through it. But there's an opportunity then to make use of some of that bloat and turn those into real teams. So what would I do for the characters and ships? If you're going to place multiple fleets in Grand Arena, and when you get to Division 2, you're going to have 4 fleets. And we're pretty far away from 4 fleets with this account right now. So I would say you got to free up that Hound's Tooth for another team at some point. So I would farm that BTLB Y-Wing pilotless ship that's Galactic Republic, and get that set up so that you can use that with your negotiator fleet and potentially use that Hound's Tooth somewhere else. I think you need a strong second fleet even for where you're at now, and I think you've got enough ships that are okay that you could put together this fleet with the bomber, take that all the way to 7 stars, and then hide Vader behind 2 tanks in your starting lineup. You've got Sun Fac at 7 stars, and Sun Fac could be the second tank in this lineup. He's not Empire, and I'd be assuming that you'd use the Chimera with this team based on the development of the different capital ships that you have. So Sun Fac works just fine. I mean, he is a beefy tank, and his taunt comes and goes depending on whether or not the opponent has buffs. And it makes that a tricky ship to get around. And you got to protect that Vader and keep him alive because he's really the core of that team. You got the Scimitar that can come in. It's got great synergy with Vader. It's got a good reinforce ability, and then it puts taunt on target lock as he brings in reinforcements, so it's great synergy. You can put in the Vulture if you need that buff immunity for an opponent's Hound's Tooth. Xanadu Blood is nice. You can bring that in, call Vader to assist. And then Slave 1 is just another ship that'll come in with taunt off of the reinforce in case you need to throw some more meat in front of Vader so he doesn't die. So, I mean, the ships are already in there to make that second fleet, but then you got to work on those pilots. You got to work on Sun Fac. You got to, you've already got the Scimitar with Maul built up, so that's fine. But maybe Slave 1 would need a little more work on the Boba Fett. So that second fleet definitely needs to be developed. I can see a Rebel fleet in there. And again, if you have to get to 4 fleets, you can throw that Rebel fleet somewhere in on defense or something like that. But for sure, I would get a second strong fleet going. Because you're going to have Veers, Stark, and Piet for the Sith Eternal unlocks, in my opinion, you got to go ahead and commit to an Imperial Trooper team. You've got the Snow Trooper and Death Trooper already at 7 stars, so I would build those up as the other 2 characters to put in that team. I would definitely get the Sith Empire Trooper tank built up. I think you're really going to want that for your Sith Eternal Emperor team. And I know that, like for the arena and stuff like that, you can put Sith Eternal Emperor with your Darth Revan and Bastila, and it'll eat everything in the arena. So that's fine. But you don't want to have to commit all of that stuff when you're in Grand Arena. You want to be able to separate out those teams. Sith Eternal is great on offense. He can solo everything up to most Galactic Legends. So the Sith Eternal is going to be great on offense. It's a single character that can take down a really strong team by himself. But yeah, I think you're really going to want that Sith Empire Trooper. And if you wanted to, you could just build the Sith Empire Trooper as a tank, and you can build that red Sith Trooper, and then you can put 3 of your other Sith like Sidious and Maul and Dooku or something like that. 3 of those guys that you had to relic anyway for the requirements, and put them in with the Sith Empire Trooper and the Sith Trooper, and that makes a viable team. It takes some pretty junky characters, but it turns it into a viable team that you could put on defense, and your opponent's going to have to deal with it. They're going to have to come up with something clever to take out that team, because it's going to be all relic, and it's going to have enough tricks up its sleeve that if the opponent lets it get away, and maybe the Sith Marauder goes on that team. So if you did Sidious and Maul and the Marauder, that would be a tough team. I would definitely relic the Nest. She can solo stuff in Grand Arena, and that gives you a 1-for-5 ratio. It gives you a team for one character. So I would work on those things. Of course, we're working on the Sith Eternal Emperor first. We're not going to lose focus on that. I appreciate what's being done in this account, and stay with that and finish it out. But then right after that, this is the kind of stuff I would work on. Just a general comment. I see some gear pieces placed for Gear 13 already, and I don't place the gear pieces until I'm ready to level up the character. And I realize that it does make the character just a little bit stronger by placing that gear piece, and it does, for example, make the ships a little bit stronger by placing that gear piece. But I typically, have those pieces floating, and then when I decide that I want to relic a character, I, finish it out and put all 6 pieces on that character. And that way, if I change my mind later or change my focus, I don't end up having some gear pieces attached to characters that I never finish out to relic level. No right or wrong answers, just something to consider. After the Sith Eternal Emperor, there's a lot of projects that are pretty obvious. Work on your Padme team, work on your Jedi Knight Revan, work on Rebels. There's a Mon Mothma in there somewhere. So there's a lot of stuff that's obvious. But I think there's a couple teams that you could work on that would be really good that you've already got underway that might be going under the radar. So you've got some Night Sister stuff going on, and I've had some experience with a Relict Asajj Ventress as an offensive team in Grand Arena, and then you just take her in with the zombie. And it's a surprisingly effective offensive team. She can deal with buffs and debuffs. She has a heal. The zombie, you need the zombie to be tough enough that it doesn't die all the time, and put a little bit of speed on it. Because if they kill your zombie twice in this team and they get it stuck on that -2 debuff, it can be, you won't get the taunt back on your zombie, which is pretty annoying. But if that does happen, they'll kill Asajj, that'll reset zombie, and then you'll be back in the cycle again. So obviously you don't take this in against teams that have a Disintegrate or something that can just, deal with your Asajj. But this is... Asajj has a lot of durability. She does a ton of damage. And against some teams that might be like, a Relic, not really a Relic team, but like a lot of Gear 12s and stuff like that, you can take this Asajj team in there with zombie and just roll it. So again, it's a way to get a win with very little characters without having to have too many relics. And then you're very close to a droid kill squad, and it's fallen out of favor a little bit. But in let's say GAC 3, GAC 2, you're still at the level where people aren't paying attention to all the mechanics of the game, and they don't see this coming. So what you do, you build this team of droids, and it's got HK as the lead, which you've already got at 7 stars, gear 12, so it's not too much of a stretch to say, okay, we can build this HK as a lead. Droids get 30% critical chance, 20% critical damage, and gain turn meter on a critical hit. So they're easier to get crits, they hit harder on crits. And then he's got this big AoE spell. His third ability starts on cooldown, so he's always usually going to do that big AoE as his first skill. T3M4 has combat logic upgrade. He gives potency and crit chance every time he uses an ability, and droid allies have 8% crit damage for each debuff on the enemy team. So that, again, stacks your damage up. His skill that he likes to use first dispels buffs on enemies, deals special damage, and put debuffs on them, and removes 20% turn meter. So not only does it like debuff them and strip them of their buffs, but also takes away turn meter. Grievous, in case anybody doesn't know, Grievous kills all the other droids on his team every time he starts a turn, but that gives him health and makes him bigger. His middle skill is also an area effect damage all ability that inflicts target locks for 2 turns and removes 30% turn meter. So if both he and T3 go, you will have removed 50% turn meter from your opponents and gained a bunch of turn meter from all your crits. Rapid fire on IG-88 hits hard, does ability block, and if an enemy is critically hit, it does target lock. And then he has this adaptive aim algorithm, and at top level, it's a huge crit damage extra. In addition, he has 20% offense for each debuffed enemy, which is if 5 debuffed enemies make it 100% offense. And while he's active, target locked enemies can't recover health or protection. So let's run this down. We've got somebody who's buffing up our crit skills for leadership. We've got T3M4 that's giving us potency and more damage. We've got Grievous who's doing a ton of damage. We've got IG-88 who's doing 7.5 tons of damage. We've got HK-47 who's doing 12 tons of damage. And BB-8, why is he here? Well, he's here simply for self-preservation. At the start of each encounter, if BB-8 is active, droids gain 8% turn meter for each active droid ally. So what you do on this team, and it's not a walk in the park to do this, but if you can get these droids all up, let's say to about 220 speed, that's going to allow you, when you gain 40% turn meter, it's going to put you up over 300 on your speed, about 310, I believe. When people come in against you, even if they look at your speed, they'll see 220. They won't pay that much attention to it. And Grievous is, I think his base speed is like 130. So you gotta put a speed arrow on Grievous, and you gotta give him some speed substats, and he needs 100 speed to make this work. So it's a little bit tricky. But if you get all your droids up there, and then you want T3 to go first, General Grievous to go second if he can, and then IG and HK-47 can, either way. But all of these guys need to be up around, 200, over 200 speed for sure. Up around 220 is ideal. And that gives a good chance against most teams that aren't paying attention that this team will go first, get a ton of critical hits, gain a bunch of turn meter from HK's leadership, strip away 50% turn meter with the other abilities off of T3 and General Grievous, and then they get to go a second time. And this team is literally, the opponent expects to go first. They don't. They're dead. It's over. And like I said, this team isn't that popular anymore. And there was a time when a team like it was pretty popular. But because you've already got a lot of these guys at 7 stars, I feel like it's not that much of a stretch to do this. And the T3 and the BB-8 don't even need to be geared up that good. The HK-47, if you relic him, you're not going to be sad about that. He's a good character. He can fit in with your Darth Revan team if nothing else. And then IG-88, you don't even need to take him to relic level. You could probably just put him on gear 12. And again, this is meant to be a defensive team in Grand Arena, and it just surprises people, and they get a loss against it. And then once that happens, our team keeps turn meter, so every time they bring in another team to try again, they're already wound up on turn meter, and BB-8's going to give them 40% turn meter again at the start of the combat. This team, if it gets a hold, it could possibly get multiple holds. It's a fun team. And again, it's not, let's say, the best in the meta, but for your account, for what you've already got, that's a tricky little team that you could put together. And basically all you would have to do is relic that HK, put a little bit of effort into these other guys, and of course build your Grievous, and then put enough mods on them to make the team go fast enough to make the trick work. So those are my thoughts. That's the account review. Thank you all for your time. I hope this was fun and people learned something, and I hope it helps the account owner get a couple ideas on what could come next. Please give me a like, give me a subscribe, watch more videos in the future, and I'll see you next time.